I want to move on also and talk about, of course, the Prime Minister's visit to China and its ramifications economically also, and its key highlights and what it means for Pakistan. We have with us Dr. Usman Chohan. Ji, Usman Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Ji, Usman, there is, we've of course spoken about economy from time to time. In your opinion, when you look at this visit particularly, how do you look at it with regard to its goals, economic goals, and of course the delegation overall, and what its main focus is going to be?
First of all, thank you for having me on your show. It's always a supreme pleasure of mine. As far as the Prime Minister's visit to China goes, I think there's an important symbolism behind it at three levels. The first level is that it symbolizes a whole of government approach and commitment to reinvigorating the Pakistan-China relationship. A huge contingent has gone from Pakistan to Shenzhen and Beijing, etc. It's quite a significant thing. It's not just, in fact, government, but the private sector also has a contingent to signal to the Chinese that we're all here to reconnect. And not that we've ever lost the connection, but we want to give it new strength. From peak to peak, you might say. The second symbolism is that this visit is being treated as so important that our budget is actually being passed 2 days further out. It's a little bit of an inconvenience for me as an economist, but I understand that it's very, very important, and it gives a very good signal that it is, in fact, very important for us to expend the full length of our time in China and look at all possibilities and present very meaningful options for investment, for reconnection, people to people.
You mentioned that there is, of course, renewing our relationship. We've also seen unfortunate, attacks that have happened, the terrorism that has come from Afghanistan, at its impact overall. And this, do you think that this visit is also in that sense a reassurance?
It isn't necessarily a reassurance, because I don't believe that the Chinese people, the Chinese government, was severely affected in any way. Because what I mean to say is that they are very resolute and very committed to Pakistan. These types of things will happen because we are living in a complicated world, and I believe the Chinese understood that. So they didn't necessarily need reassurance, because they have a very large commitment, a sincere one, to us as we have to them. So yes, these hiccups, they're unpleasant, they're hurtful, it leaves a bad taste, but we're all in this together. Dealing with the scourge of terrorism, and Afghanistan is a problematic country for 4 decades. It's not a particular surprise. So I don't think it needed reassurance per se.
Okay, but overall, as far as this, so then, the second part of it is, of course, the economy and what it can mean for Pakistan, and of course the fact that the Chinese have pledged, like you said, an unprecedented amount of support in Pakistan and CPEC. So how do you look at CPEC in that light?
This is an excellent question, because CPEC has various stages. The first phase of CPEC was completed successfully, but it was a fairly simple thing, a simple affair in the sense that it was infrastructure, pure infrastructure to set the bedrock of this project. Phase 2, however, is more complicated because it has a human element to it, far larger. It requires initiative from private sector, public sector. It requires rearranging and reconfiguring parts of Pakistan in the sense of having special economic zones as well as routes activating. So it's a new step, more complicated and more important than just mere infrastructure. So at this stage, CPEC needs this push. We really need to get it activated, and that actually does require a careful human touch, more so than just assigning engineers to build stuff.
Right, fair enough. And as far as the diplomatic and the cooperation between Pakistan and China is concerned, do you think that, with regard to the region particularly and the changes here, of course, we're looking at the elections, from across the border, the hostility that is invariably there in the shape of, India, the region itself. Do you think that it's going to be, perhaps a cause of reflection, or that's also something that's going to be on the agenda?
It always has been. Not that I'm an expert on geopolitics, but certainly something that Pakistan and China have in common is a concern about how India is evolving as a society, and the fact that you have this Hindutva mindset sticking there. Of course, it's gotten a bit of a nudge from the voters, but it's still there. And the persecution of Muslims, I don't expect to stop by any measure. In addition, China has interests in South Asia that are beyond Pakistan. For example, they're involved in Bangladesh in a significant way, as well as Myanmar, as well as Sri Lanka. Those are also becoming areas of competition, is a mild way to put it. But for example, Bangladesh has been between a rock and a hard place lately. And so the Chinese-Indian relationship, the Pakistan-India relationship, and the Chinese-Pakistan relationship all have their own unique dynamics with a strong economic bent, but also various other facets that are going to face tensions propagated by the persistence of the BJP in a new government formation. To some degree, we know that the government isn't formed yet, but to some degree it certainly will be there seething or simmering in their system of power.
As far as the business delegation overall is concerned, pursuant to our investment goals, in terms of tangible, returns from this trip, how do you look at it?
That's a very important point you're raising, because going there and signing MOUs is the easy part. But taking the whole of government as well as the private sector to China means that the commitment was there, and then the second part of that commitment will be to put these things into practice when everybody comes back home. And that's actually when the homework will have to be done. Of course, the budget will be on people's minds, the IMF will be on people's minds, but all the takeaways from this important, multifaceted, multi-city, multi-institutional visit have to be put down and then put into place. So I think this government's approach is very intelligent in this way. Pakistan is now going to take all these stakeholders, has taken them there, and now is bringing them, when they come back, going to say, okay, now who has to do what? Now that we have all this on the table, let's get this into practice. I think that's very good in terms of implementation. So I expect the second phase, once people return, to then get things going for phase 2 of CPEC.
Right, fair enough. Thank you so much, Dr. Usman. It's always very nice to have you, and your answers are always very informative. Thank you for joining us.